How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Black Metal Rebellion. I'm your host, Jesse Morgan, aka Slammerella, and today something came in the mail that I was expecting from a good friend of mine, and that is Joseph from Revenge Prevails, and what I got is the new Revenge Prevails called Habitats. This is their third album, and it is following False Hope Cruelty. This is what we're reviewing today. Revenge Prevails, Habitats. Now, don't let the artwork here fool you. This is still a very grim and dark and fairly brutal Blackened Death album. Now, if you don't know who Revenge Prevails are, you haven't been keeping up with my reviews by these guys. They are a melodic Blackened Death band from Sweden that started in about 2008. This puppy was released June 14th of this year, but thanks to Canada Post, it got to me earlier today. So now I'm doing the review for it, and hopefully you guys will check it out. Besides being a melodic Blackened Death band, the members from this are Joseph Svensson, who is the lead vocalist and guitar player for Revenge Prevails, followed by Ludwig Bjork, who also does some guitaring on this album and for this band. Besides those two on guitar and vocals, there's also Isabella Romer, who adds some bass, some low end to this album, and also some female vocals as well. Don't know why, I always feel the term female vocals a little odd, but I don't have any other way of presenting that information, so female vocals it is. And following that is Christoph Hellerin on drums. So, as usual, I break it down via each instrument and then give my general thoughts. This is my thoughts on the vocals. They are the forefront of the mix, but not too overbearing, and they are well balanced. As for the performance of the vocals, they're solid and consistent throughout, and they have a pretty distinct sound. As for the style that Joseph presents, it is a kind of raspy, expected Blackened Death kind of growl. They are about mid-range for the most part. There are some slight dips here and there into a lower pitch, i.e. the devastation that we brought. And as well, there's the odd added blech vocal accentuations here and there, like in Reinventing the Wheel. There are even some almost Danny Filth highs in a couple of songs once in a while. As for the female vocals, they're clean vocals, and they pop up here and there throughout Hidden Within the Hive, His Words Hollow, and Nightmares of Promised Land. As for the guitars, they're high in the mix, but well panned and have a great tone. They are mostly tight and flawless in execution and have some pretty palatable layering amongst Joseph and Ludwig's guitaring. There's some pretty decent sweeping tremolos. There's also some hauntingly dark chuggy riffs, like in Far End of the Sprawl, as well as some melodic, soulful, clean-picked arrangements, as heard in His Words Hollow and Nightmares of Promised Land. And there are also some pretty soaring solos throughout. Nothing super crazy or technical or Kirk Hammett-like, but very emotive and heartfelt solos for sure. Alright, let's move on to the bass. So, Isabella's section of this album. The bass was low to mid-range in the mix and very punchy and full of heft. It was executed really well and about on par with the guitars. The sound of it was very crunchy and rattling like the chains of death. And of course, once you hear it, it adds that extra scratch and ominous kind of gnawing attack throughout the entire album. So yeah, it wasn't buried beneath all of the mix like some black metal albums are. You definitely did notice it here and there. It did have moments to shine, and I did enjoy what I heard from it, and it definitely did add the extra little spice and flavor throughout. Now, as for the drums, we go off to Christopher Hellerin, and his drums were about mid-level in the mix, excellently arranged and positioned in the mix though. The delivery was stellar, and he had some on-point timing and flow. There was a good amount of double kicks, Euro blasts, and his fill seemed natural and effortless. Christopher went from fast to slow melodic beats smoothly. He was able to pull off nice tension builds and releases, as well as an excellent use of cymbals that added to moments of intensity throughout the album. So good job there, Christopher, on the drums. Alright, so moving on to a couple of my favorite tracks off of Habitats. The first one I want to mention in no order is number 3, and that is Far End of the Sprawl. Pretty neat song title, by the way, and it had a bunch of sick, chuggy riffs in it, as well as some intense tremolos. I just really feel like this was one of their best tracks. So definitely up there on my repeat listens list on this album is Far End of the Sprawl. Following that is probably number 5, and that is So Many Wounds. That just had this rumbling, pounding barrage of riffs in it, had these grimy, muted chugs, and it also had this epic and menacing feel throughout. So yeah, So Many Wounds was really, really good. It had some excellent vocal deliveries, and really just had like that in the pocket Black and Death feel. And last but not least of my favorite tracks on this album is number 6, Reinventing the Wheel. Although I don't feel it reinvented too much of the wheel of the Black and Death genre, the song did have a bunch of really haunting and great melodic riffs, some very dark and looming presentation throughout, and had a really thick, creepy atmosphere. And the funny thing about Reinventing the Wheel is, if you look at the back, it's not to be seen in the track list anywhere, so it was a shame that it got left off of the back of the CD cover, because once again, that is one of my favorite tracks off of here, and if you weren't paying attention, that would just be completely thrown off and would probably have thought to have been The Devastation That We Brought, although in the list here, the position that The Devastation That We Brought is actually in Reinventing the Wheels spot. So if you do rip this to your laptop or have this CD and you want to transfer it to your phone or your listening device, or if you're playing it on your Xbox or on a CD player, The Devastation That We Brought is actually Reinventing the Wheel, and Nightmares of a Promised Land is actually track 8, not 7. So just keep that in mind when you're listening to it. Now, as for my overall thoughts on this album, I feel this is a more mature sound and a better production value for Revenge Prevails via Bloodlord of Lord Belial Studios. So they definitely got hooked up there by being able to work with the guy from Lord Belial. Really, really cool indeed. Congrats on that, guys. And of course, this is a natural progression from the False Hope Cruelty album. It added more melody, it added more vocal variations, and definitely has some different song diversity in this album. And of course, they leveled up in talent and technical capabilities. They are definitely getting higher in their musicianship, and it definitely is present on this album. And with that said, Revenge Prevails could easily play alongside bands such as Balfagor, Black Witchery, or even Archgoat, and the like. So you could see them on a tour right beside the greats in the Black and Death scene without blinking an eye. Now, before I end this, I do want to give a couple of notes as to why it's not a perfect 10 out of 10, and this is why. I feel like it could have maybe had a better snare sound, maybe crispier or more pronounced in the mix. And since they added female vocals in this, I feel like they could have perhaps utilized Isabella's vocals in a less predictable way, a little less obvious, kind of clean operatic type of vocals. It's not all operatic, some of it's just sung cleanly. I feel like maybe if they added some shrieks or some growls or something more hard hitting with their vocals besides just kind of the obvious go-to female vocal style, that it would have added that extra little notch in the ranking system for what we have on this album. As well, the last thing that I feel was a slight bit of hindrance to this album, although not by much because it's a really good album, was the first track, that being Hidden Within the Hive. I felt like it was probably the least outstanding track on here. It had its own little neat little riffs, of course, but at the same time, compared to all the rest of the songs on this album, I feel like they could have chose a better one to start off the Habitats release with. So with that being said, I'm gonna have to give it a 9 out of 10, which is still an excellent rating in my opinion. They definitely leveled up from False Hope Cruelty. They added in some new vocal stuff. They added some excellent different guitar riffs in here, a little bit more moody melodic elements and arrangements, the layering of the guitars, and the extra little spicy crunchy scratchiness of the bass clunking around in the background with the drums for the percussion side of things really added to it. So yeah, 9 out of 10 for the new album by Revenge Prevails entitled Habitats, that was released June 14th. But don't take my word for it. Go check it out yourself and decide whether you think Habitats is worth purchasing or not. I'm Jesse Morgan, and I would buy this album. Cheers, guys. For glory, for the Rebel Alliance. Slammerella out. And finally, Christoph